Welcome back to Terrifying Horror Stories. Tonight, we journey deep into the remote highlands of Papua New Guinea, a world away from everything you know. This isn't a ghost story or a tale of some mythical beast. This story is chillingly real, a medical mystery that baffled scientists for decades. And its origins lie in a tradition so macabre, it's hard to believe it ever happened. This is the story of the Fore people and the devastating curse they brought upon themselves, a disease they called Kuru. Imagine lush, green mountains shrouded in mist, so isolated that the people living there had little contact with the outside world until the 1950s. This was the home of the Fore. They were a community bound by strong traditions and deep respect for their ancestors. And it was this very respect, this profound love for their deceased family members, that led to their downfall. For the Fore, death was not an ending. They believed that the spirit of their loved ones resided within their bodies, and to let that body simply rot in the ground was unthinkable. It was a form of abandonment. So, they practiced a ritual known as endocannibalism. This wasn't an act of aggression. It was an act of love and mourning. They would consume parts of their deceased relatives to absorb their wisdom, their strength, and to keep their spirit alive within the community. It was the ultimate way to honor the dead. Women and children were the primary participants in these mortuary feasts. They would carefully prepare the body, and different parts were believed to hold different qualities. The men rarely took part. They believed it would make them weaker in battle. So the women would consume the flesh, the organs, and even the brain. The brain was considered particularly special, a vessel of knowledge and spirit. They would mix it with ferns and cook it in bamboo tubes. By eating their loved ones, they believed they were creating an eternal bond, a cycle of life and spirit that would never be broken. But they were wrong. They had unknowingly opened a door to a relentless, terrifying disease. It started subtly. A slight tremor in the hands, an unsteady walk. The Fore called it Kuru, which means to shake or to tremble. At first, they thought it was sorcery, a curse cast by an enemy. The victim, usually a woman, would start to lose control of her body. Her legs would become unsteady, her speech would slur. Then came the uncontrollable, almost spastic laughter, a chilling, vacant laugh that had no joy in it. This gave Kuru its other name in the outside world, the laughing sickness. But there was nothing funny about it. As the disease progressed, the trembling would become violent. The victims couldn't stand, they couldn't feed themselves. Their bodies would twitch and jerk uncontrollably. Yet through it all, their minds often remained terrifyingly clear. They were prisoners in their own deteriorating bodies, fully aware of what was happening to them. They would waste away, unable to swallow, eventually succumbing to starvation, pneumonia, or simply choking. From the first tremor to the final breath, it took about a year. And it was always fatal. There was no cure. By the mid-1950s, Kuru was an epidemic. In some villages, it was the leading cause of death among women. The gender imbalance became so extreme that there were barely any young women left. The community was collapsing. This is when the outside world finally took notice. Australian patrol officers and medical researchers ventured into this isolated world, determined to understand what was happening. One of them was a young, ambitious American physician named Carlton Gaduzek. When Gaduzek arrived, he was confronted with a medical nightmare. He documented case after case, taking detailed notes and filming the victims in the final, agonizing stages of Kuru. The footage is haunting. It shows women and children, their bodies racked with violent tremors, their faces frozen in those empty, laughing grimaces. Gaduzek and other scientists were baffled. They tested for every known virus, every bacteria, every toxin. Nothing. They couldn't find the cause. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A veterinary pathologist named William Hadlow noticed a striking similarity between the brains of Kuru victims and the brains of sheep that had died from a disease called scrapie. Both sets of brains were riddled with microscopic holes, giving them a sponge-like appearance. This condition is known as spongiform encephalopathy, but scrapie wasn't caused by a virus or bacteria. It was caused by something new, something that defied all known biological rules. The answer was prions. Not a living organism, but a misfolded protein. Imagine a normal protein as a perfectly folded piece of paper. A prion is that same piece of paper, but it's been crumpled into the wrong shape. The terrifying thing about prions is that they are infectious. When a rogue prion enters the body, it acts as a template, causing all the healthy, normal proteins of the same type to misfold and crumple just like it. It's a chain reaction, a cascade of corruption that spreads through the brain, leaving a wasteland of dead neurons and spongy holes in its wake. These prions are incredibly resilient. They can't be killed by boiling, radiation, or alcohol, the usual methods for sterilization. They are, for all intents and purposes, indestructible. And for the Fore people, the source of this deadly protein was the brains of their deceased relatives. With every loving, ritualistic meal, they were unknowingly ingesting the agent of their own destruction. The incubation period was incredibly long, sometimes decades. A child could participate in a funeral feast and not show any symptoms of Kuru until they were a middle-aged adult. It was a ticking time bomb, passed down from mother to daughter, aunt to niece, generation to generation. Once the connection between the funeral rituals and the disease was made, the Australian government banned the practice of endocannibalism in the late 1950s. The Fore people, seeing the devastation it had caused, largely abandoned the tradition themselves. The change was dramatic. The number of Kuru cases began to fall. Those born after the rituals ceased did not develop the disease. The last known Kuru victim died in 2009. The curse had finally been broken. The story of Kuru is a profound tragedy. It's a story of how an act of love and reverence became a vector for a horrific, unstoppable disease. It's a chilling reminder of how little we sometimes understand about the world around us and the hidden dangers that can lurk in the most sacred of traditions. The Fore people ate their dead not out of savagery, but out of a deep desire to keep their loved ones close. But in doing so, they consumed a horror that nearly consumed them in return. The laughing sickness has fallen silent in the highlands of New Guinea, but its echo serves as a permanent, terrifying lesson. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's most frightening medical mysteries. If you found this story as chilling as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more terrifying horror stories. Until next time, stay safe.